Hi there, it's Nicole here today with a kindness card featuring a divided background with a border stamp. It's just a really easy way to divide kind of more of the embellishment portion of the card from an oversized greeting, and I'm doing that with a border stamp here today. This card is part of the Honeybee Stamps World Kindness Day. Just a great way to celebrate kindness, and the world definitely needs more of it. Even though it's a super small thing, sending a card in the mail oftentimes puts a smile on the recipient's face, and it's just an easy way that we as card makers can share a little bit of kindness with others. I am going to start with a background piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. This is trimmed to A2 size, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And I have kind of positioned on the background because other than the little divided strip, this is all on one layer. So I'm going to use this whole background. So I've planned where I want to put this Zen Floral border. It's a gorgeous, detailed floral stamp from Honeybee Stamps. I love the Zen Floral. There's a couple of different stamp sets with these floral designs, and they're just gorgeous. I'm going to stamp the border with Versamark and heat emboss with white embossing powder. One of my favorite things to do is watercolor florals with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. There's not a ton of watercoloring per se here. I'm going to color the images in with the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers without the addition of water, just because the images are so small. I kind of felt like maybe the water portion would really get lost, and I wanted to keep the focus and detail on the flowers. By laying the dark color down first and then pulling in the lighter color, it kind of blends that darker color out. Super easy. It's really a fast coloring technique. Now, one thing about stamping on white cardstock, embossing with white, and then coloring it in with a detailed image, it can be a little tricky until you get a number of the images colored in and kind of see where you're at. I like to move kind of in just small groups. I started with that largest floral from the design, and then I moved on to the greenery because there's a lot of greenery, and I felt like if I could fill in some of the greenery, it would help me see where all the flowers are going to be. I'm kind of moving my way right to left. No particular reason. You could move any direction you wanted to, or kind of start in the middle and work your way out. But I do think working in a small area for an image like this does kind of help, because then you can just move on to the next image and the next image. I have listed the colors I'm using there in the bottom right corner of the screen today. Trying to kind of keep it with what I'm actually coloring at the moment. So a lot of greenery here, and then the blues and the violets for these flowers. I wanted the flowers to be really deep, bold, and really colorful, very rainbow color in feeling, because that kindness greeting we're going to add in a little bit is going to be a rainbow type of greeting, and I'm going to show how to ink that up for that rainbow effect as well. Now, to even help these images stand out more, I will be watercoloring just the bottom half of this panel. So anything from the bottom of these florals down, I'm going to add some watercoloring, and it's going to be a super simple, messy watercoloring that I'll share here in just a little bit. I even started watercoloring before I actually got the whole border colored, because once I had some of the colors down, it was easy to see kind of where I was at, and I thought maybe by watercoloring a part of that border, it would help guide, I guess, where I needed to go next with my color. I also didn't want to keep the whole background stark white. I think it would have been beautiful white, but this almost gives the illusion of a white strip along the top of the card, that thin gray strip that's going to divide my two background pieces. So the top of the card is the greeting with the white background. The bottom is this bold, beautiful floral border on an aqua background. So it almost gives the look of white gray, and then an aqua background with a floral border, even though it's only 2 pieces of paper. Anytime I can keep the layering and the dimension and the thickness of a card to a minimum to really help with being able to mail it easily in a standard envelope, I'm all for that. So a lot of times I really try to find ways to minimize the layers, and this is a great way to kind of do a faux layering technique. Here is that turquoise green that I'm using for the background, and I think it looks a lot more natural, I guess, as far as watercolor. If you scribble that marker on an acrylic block or palette of some sort, pick up the color with a wet paintbrush, or in this case a water brush pen, and paint it on the background. Another option would be to color around some of the images with your marker and blend it out. I've done that in the past. I do think you end up maybe with a little bit of an outline. It doesn't blend all the way out. So instead of kind of this more watercolor effect where you're not seeing a harsh line around the images, I think you would see a little bit of an outline. It just depends on your personal preference. I love scribbling it on an acrylic block and then simply picking it up and painting it on the background. And this is a good example now that I kind of did the right side, and you can see the background, you can see the flowers, and then look at the left side where I haven't colored everything in yet. I've colored in a few, but as you see the colors kind of come to life in the floral border and see that white underneath, it really shows you how different it looks when you watercolor the background as opposed to leaving it white. I think if I wanted to leave it white, I would have stamped the border with a black ink and colored it in, just so I think the detail gets lost with a white border on a white background. A lot of times I like to add just a tiny touch of usually blue of some sort, whether it be the turquoise green I used here, which is more of an aqua color, or you could even use something a little bit lighter if you didn't want it to be quite as dramatic as this. And it just helps it pop, because I really do love the look of white embossing for florals. So here I'm just kind of filling this in, watercoloring all the way around. Once I got close to the end, I felt like this would really help determine where I needed to go. So I went ahead and filled in the rest of that. Just want to be kind of careful not to touch the zigs close to where I've watercolored until that watercolor has dried, so that the color doesn't bleed outside the lines. Or be really, really careful. Lots of greenery in this left corner of the card with just some little pops of florals here and there throughout. Really fun. I love these Zen Florals. I cannot say enough great things about them. And originally I kind of thought that I would just keep it at this and just add my greetings above the kind of divider line and maybe add in a couple of bumblebees. I did think that a couple of bumblebees would be kind of fun, but there was some nice white space to the left of the greeting, so I will be adding some additional flowers using the coordinating dies for the Zen Florals for this. One of my favorite things to do with a scripty greeting, if you follow me at all, you probably know I do this a lot, is to take my script dies and die cut them from a sandwich of cardstock adhered to fun foam with Stick It. I generally always have a scrap of this on hand because it is one of my favorite things. If you die cut it from white cardstock, you can customize that greeting with any color of ink you want, or even leave it white. What I love from the kindness dies is that kind and ness are separate, because you could also do kindest. So there's a couple of different options. I love that Honeybee gives us so many options with our greetings, and this kindness greeting stamp set and coordinating dies is amazing. If you didn't want to die cut the greeting, you could also stamp it. So I am going to ink up now kind of each letter of this greeting. I'm working on a easy clean craft matte surface, and I'm inking up the letters with one color at a time to resemble rainbow color and really reinforce that feeling of rainbow from the bold floral that's going to be on the bottom half of the card. I'm using picked raspberry, barn door, spiced marmalade, mustard seed, twisted citron, mowed lawn, salty ocean, and wilted violet distress inks. Now I'm using the regular inkers to ink these up. I wish I would have grabbed the little Dauber Duos. They're just kind of a small foam applicator that fits on your finger. They're smaller and I probably would have had a little more control. This is a big bold greeting, so it wasn't too bad, but the blue kind of down here in the NESS part of the word kindness, the letters are a lot closer together and I would have had a lot more control on keeping that ink right where I wanted it. I didn't mind some color blend from color to color, so it's okay. I've got this thin scrap of gray cardstock now that I'm putting a 1/8 inch piece of score tape on the back. It's about the same width as that score tape. And I'm simply going to pop that in place right above my floral border. So here's my divider line that divides the top of the card from the bottom of the card. One panel with one teeny tiny strip of cardstock, and it automatically gives you the look of 3 pieces of paper. Now that I have that in place, I'm going to carefully pick up my kindness die and pop that in place, starting with the end of the word, because I want that to I want everything to be shifted over to the right on my background. And I want it to sit right atop that gray border. Some of the swoops and flourishes and things are going to kind of fall below that divider line, and that's what gives it such a great look. But I want the majority of those letters to kind of be sitting atop that line. So the I, the N, the D, any of those little flourishes and things like that can dip below, and that's perfectly fine. Now I'm taking the thank you and for your greetings from the kindness stamp set and positioning them there on my background, picking them up with the Misty, and I'm going to stamp these with some VersaFine ONYX ink right on either side of the loop in the D, so that it kind of straddles that, but I want everything to be nice and tight together, if that makes sense. And then I don't want to forget the little dot for the I either. And it looks beautiful like this, but I want to add just a few more embellishments. The teeny tiny bees from the Busy Bees stamp set, I think size-wise work beautifully with the florals from this. So I'm going to use both of the teeny tiny bees from Busy Bees, and I just want to figure out where I want to put both of those, use the little bee trails, the little dotted lines. And I want this one to go kind of back behind the K in the word kindness. I will pop that up and probably have to stamp this one with an acrylic block, since I've already placed the kindness word down on my project, and I want to be really careful. I didn't want to bend it or crease it, mess that up at all. But I want to make sure I get that positioned right where I want it to go. Pick that up with my acrylic block, and then I'm going to stamp these with the VersaFine ink as well. The VersaFine ink works fantastic for Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. It would not work for Copic coloring because it'll bleed, but for the Zig markers, it is awesome. So I'm just going to use that for the little bees. There is one of them. The other one, I can go ahead and just stamp that with my Misty since I already had it lined up there. And there are my cute little bees coming up from the word kindness. In addition to the bees, I think a few little florals coming off that left side of the greeting, especially some leafy greens, some little taller images. I like to think of it kind of like as in floral design, where you want some height and then you want some greenery and maybe a little pop of color. And so I picked some stamps to kind of create that. I don't want to overpower the design. The kindness word in rainbow color is the star of the show on the upper half of the card. It just reinforces that floral feeling from the bottom half. These I'm going to stamp on a scrap of Bristol Smooth cardstock, again with Versamark ink. Heat emboss with white embossing powder. I want to keep that same feeling from the bottom of the card. And then I'm going to color these in with the zigs, just like I did before. This is a good example of how they look stamped directly on the background without die cutting. And in this case, they're all going to be die cut and used as embellishments. Very quick little coloring here. One thing to note, if you do or color them like I do, where you lay down the dark color first and blend out with your lighter color, you want to clean the tip of your marker frequently. I scribble it over there to the side a little bit. Clean that lighter marker color off so you don't cross-contaminate the next time you go to use it. And that also helps keep the coloring looking really nice. I'm just going to use a little Ranger Multi-Matte Medium now to glue down my florals, starting with the tall floral in the back, my greenery here, and then finishing with the additional little stem and the pink and purple flower. The bees were colored in with just some yellows and grays here just a little bit ago. Very, very light coloring. The wings have a little wink of Stella clear glitter brush pen as well. And then I'm just going to put something heavy on that to hold it down till it dries. Go ahead and attach the whole panel onto a side fold card base. And then something I like to do, especially with floral cards for whatever reason, is round the corners, this time with a 1/2 inch corner rounder. And it really softens the edges of the card. And I love, love that look. I'm going to finish each card with a layer of glossy accents over the bumblebees to give them a nice glossy finish. I did have a few air bubbles in my glossy accents, so I'm just going to take a straight pin and try to pop those. Let this sit and dry, and my kindness card featuring a divided background created with a border stamp is all finished. Thanks for joining me today for this kindness card featuring honeybee stamps and dies. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring honeybee stamps that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.